longer time, I'll spread them out. I won't take time to do that now. I quickly wrote 3 objectives because it was something we hadn't done. There may be more things that you will learn about, but I'd like you to be able to have a working knowledge of what biofeedback is and how neurofeedback is similar to or different from biofeedback. And the word self-regulation seems really important to me, that you be able to understand what that is, because a lot of people talk about homeostatic states, how your body likes to balance, but sometimes you're off balance. And being off balance, in the way that I think about it, is it's like it's almost predictable. How could you not be off balance if you get really hard news about something? It's going to throw you off balance. How easily you can move to something that would be healing for you, or more, like how can you move from one state to another? Sometimes people are having a difficult time at home and the phone rings and suddenly the difficult time is gone and you answer the phone and everything's okay. Well, it isn't really okay, but you accommodated this new entrance into your life by just going ahead and meeting that person on the phone in a cheery way. That's what most of us do. That's not exactly an easy state from difficult, argumentative, angry to cheerful. That's not an easy transition. That's just what we do. We do that socially by putting on a lot of different hats, no matter how we feel. But what I'm talking about with self-regulation is a way to move from one state into another without being jarred, a way to make that transition. And that's really what I'm thinking about relative to self-regulation, that the body self-regulates given an opportunity. And sometimes it's like go from not having good balance in your life to doing something that will provide you with good balance, but not always being balanced. Somebody asked me when I was first starting to work with neurofeedback with kids, are all the kids going to become like zombies? Just kind of robots. No, it's just not to be thrown off by things in their life. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross talked about windstorms of life, and how can you meet the windstorms of life. And so that's kind of what that's what self-regulation is about. And we'll talk about lots of things that might be cancer-related that neurofeedback can address. And I guess to talk a little bit about biofeedback, this is a biofeedback program. Apparently, when you see evidence of what you've done, you like it, or you don't like it. Maybe you see evidence of something you've done you don't like. But if you begin to get rewarded for what you've done in some kind of a visible way, or even a tactile way, if I go over to you and I say, I'm really glad to see you, and especially if I touch her, it anchors that good thing. And that's kind of feedback. And it's feedback for your biology too. Maybe your whole body goes, ooh, feels nice. I came in today. So it's a response back to you to tell you what you're experiencing. So maybe you're measuring finger temperature. You can buy a little digital thermometer at a hardware store. That's for a greenhouse, let's say, where you want the temperature to be displayed inside about what the temperature is outside. You can take the end of that little thermometer, which is just on a coil, and put it on your finger and watch the temperature go up. You get your temperature to go up to 97 degrees on your fingers. More than likely your blood pressure will be lower, and you will have better self-regulation in your body. It's really easy. It's a $10 piece of biofeedback equipment. This is really expensive equipment, and the district court owns it, and I get to use it. And it's not as easily described as cross-country skiing, or there's even something called brain gym where if you cross left over right or right over left and the opposite with your hands and just do what's called hookups. It's a very nice brain balancer. It's not technical. But you don't get any feedback for that. You don't know for sure, except you might feel a little bit better. You take a walk and you feel better. success no matter what they do. So I'm curious now about you all and anything that any of you know about biofeedback, neurofeedback, or ways that you might have used to change states easily after a difficult time. And I also have a little bit of a hearing loss, so I may wander around and talk to you more directly if I don't hear you. Does anybody have anything of why you're interested in this? Okay.
I'm here as a student just because I'm very interested in the energies of the body. And this feels like this matches things that I've been studying in natural medicine for. To do something that's non-invasive that alters ultimately our body energy system, whether it's the auric field or whatever. And this has to fit that. So here, there.
You might want to talk a little bit about alpha theta relative to people enjoying that and you enjoying that.
Right now? Yeah, well, and before I said, I just wanted to talk a little bit about, because we use the word brain state, and that's kind of an odd, it's not the way we think of how our brain just works during the day and at night. And what we're really talking about is different levels of arousal and attention. So in a lower range, Hertz range, they call it, there's just the natural electrical activity of the brain that we can measure. And I feel like we're just beginning to, we're just beginning to understand our brains a little bit. We're just kind of at the tip of the iceberg here. So when you're in sleep, or what they call delta, very slow brainwave activity. Theta would be just before sleep, and that kind of dreamy in between. You're kind of drifting off, and that's kind of a dream, almost a dreamlike state, more inwardly focused. Alpha is about 8 to 11, and that's inwardly focused, but very calm. And there's a training called alpha theta training that actually rewards you for when alpha and theta are crossing over. And we'll talk more about what that means to get a reward. But in this way, it's an actual, these beautiful sounds. Alpha theta training, you do eyes closed. And so when your brain is producing theta, you get this nice bong. And when you're producing alpha, it's another nice tone. So it encourages your brain to go to that place. As Eva likes to say, neurofeedback is giving you a reward, saying, go there, don't go there, go there. So alpha, theta, I found I've just fallen in love with this training. And other people have worked with these states in other ways, whether it's trance posture work or different kinds of meditation. But this is a great way because it is immediate feedback. And I have found, I've done maybe 40 alpha theta trainings, and for me it helps. It is a training that's used often for post-traumatic stress disorder and addictions. It's been very helpful. Several studies have been done, but it's also used for peak performance training. People are using it with opera performers and artists and golfers to help people get sort of hone their creativity. And yes?
Is anger management being used?
Pardon?
Is it used in anger management at all?
I know that different kinds of, maybe Eva can talk about that, but anger definitely neurofeedback, and alpha theta I would think it would be helpful, but there are some specific protocols that aren't alpha situation, but if you stay there too often, it's not helpful. It's can be very damaging to the system in terms of stress hormones.
Okay, so I'm gonna, Yuba mentioned Hertz. It's a measurement of electrical activity. And in the late 1800s is when someone first realized you could measure electrical activity coming off of the scalp. And I think they just found a way to hook someone up and shone a light that would show this graph. It's called an electroencephalograph. So we call it EEG. And some of you have had EEGs at a neurologist's office, in a hospital. And it's just the measurement of this. And sometimes when you're doing different things, like when you're sleeping, if you have a sleep study, you might say, oh, there's these slow waves, but then there's also these little spindles that happen in slow waves because there's various stages of sleep. Different when you're dreaming and when you're in the twilight state. But sometimes I think, this is a very curious thing, but when I was a child, probably I wasn't more than 5 or 6, I was determined to find out what that was like, that state, just before I fell asleep. Was any of you like that? Did anybody ever wonder what that, yeah. It was like I would try so hard. What did you do?
What I did, I'm not sure.
I mean, like, how did you study it? Do you remember?
I think I just observed a lot. I was off on horseback rides alone a lot. I camped outside at a very young age on an Air Force base, but very aware of it and very cognizant that that was something that interested me at a very young age.
And you too? You were interested in it?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah,
It's like such an amazing state.
It's kind of a place that you want to stay sometimes.
I know. I think that's why I was studying it so much, but I'm curious about it.
At that age, I was in Bermuda, a lot of swimming, a lot of body work, so a lot of time on the beach was spent sleeping and
Yeah.
camping. It was a place that I retreated to often because I vividly remember feeling so good in that state.
Well, it's a state that offers opportunity for healing that is unlike any other state as far as I'm concerned. I read a description of a theta state once by I guess he was a theoretical physicist named Isaac Bentov, who died quite a few years ago. And he said, if you can stay in a theta state and you're watching a clock with the second hand, as long as you're in the theta state, the second hand won't move. And I thought, you know, you've suspended everything else. So,
Just a slip in here, I think it's in Jim Robbins' book, he talks about Albert Einstein used to doze off in a chair with a rock in his hand, and when he would doze and the rock would drop, often then he would have insight. You know, so it's like that state is accessing parts of ourselves that we don't normally have access to through our frontal cortex, thinking about things. So that's an interesting. So grab your rocks.
You don't have grass and rust.
So this is what I like in this wave activity too. Sleeping and then beginning to come a little bit awake in that theta state, the twilight, which is, by the way, I also do a lot of hypnosis in my work, and it's the desired place for a person to be able to receive suggestion is in a theta state. If in the twilight state of waking up, the household is really a nice, comforting household, it will set your pattern for the day. If the household is one in which there is a lot of negativity, that will set your pattern for the day. So, and the same thing with going to sleep, because you're in that just before you fall asleep. See, that's when I would study it more, is when I was falling asleep. That's what I remember as a child. So then I kind of liken this to what my animals, my pets would do. It's like they would come out of sleep and then they would like stretch. It would be like, that was one of the first things they do. And that, to me, means moving from theta, low activity, let's say 0, 1, sleep, and then just beginning to wake up, and then starting to stretch, and then maybe doing a little yoga, maybe like having some consciousness about doing a little yoga. Like I was in a repair place earlier today, and getting my shoes repaired, and the man that was helping me was talking about what kind of exercise he does right after he gets out of bed, and how effective it is for him. And it's really like cat stretches. And then beginning to ease in. When you see a commercial for a really good smelling coffee, you see a person coming out of that state, and then all the attention then is riveted on the smell of the coffee. But that's a very influential smell when you're first waking up if you're a coffee drinker. So by the time you get up here, you're starting to become interested in some function of your day will start. So I'm totally intrigued with these states because I see them as places of incredible access for healing. But here's our consciousness more active. So I don't know what you think about this, or how many of you have read any of Candace Pert's work. Raise your hand if you know who Candace Pert is. 1, 2. I want to recommend her to you. She wrote a book called Molecules of Emotion. So if I were you, I would write that down. And it is in paperback.
What's the last name?
And sounds true. Pert, P-E-R-T. Candace Pert. She is a professor of research at Georgetown University School of Medicine. And Molecules of Emotion has her history as a young researcher. And she is admired by so many people, and is somewhere turned the corner about spirituality and her research on molecular development and what are molecules that emotions tie everything together. And I think she talks about, maybe in the very first, maybe 1/4 of the book, how she began to be more open. No, this is the tapes. I should write down the name of the tapes for you. The tapes are called Your Body is Your Subconscious Mind. And about 1/4 of the way through the first tape, she starts talking about the chakra system. I just met Candace about 2 weeks ago, and it was a very thrilling thing for me because she has contributed so much as a researcher in the field of science, and also she's interested in neurofeedback. She's interested in all kinds of alternative ways to look at healing. So those are Sounds True tapes. What do you think of this? That the mind is really not made to make decisions. The mind is really made to receive information. Okay? We're really developed in this prefrontal cortex. Okay? My dog makes a decision based on need. My thoughts seem to say, oh, should you do this or should you do this? But actually my feelings are driving much of what I do. So my mind is really a consciousness tool. It's to pay attention. Like mind the store, mind your business. It's just to pay attention. I like that definition. Because when you say mind over matter, you separate out the mind from the body. But actually, Candace has proven with her research that this is a mind, body, and it's all one. We have intelligence in every cell. So if you do biofeedback, you're getting your fingers warmed, you're actually changing your physiology from a survival mode and a defense mode into a mode of better breath and probably better accessing of information. Just a simple thing. In neurofeedback, you're attending to something for 10, 20, 30 minutes. 2 times a week, 3 times a week, until until your brain begins to learn what it feels like. If you attend, which is mostly a left hemisphere function, then probably you relax. If you're relaxed, which is maybe training in the right hemisphere, you probably attend better. I mean, it's kind of a loop. You know, if you take a nice walk and you get this movement going, you might think of something on your walk that you haven't, people are nodding, you haven't thought of before when you were like trying to focus. What's the hardest thing of all is to try to help somebody understand how to do neurofeedback, because what it is what, like Yuka said, don't go there, just go here, and don't try, and I can't tell you how to do it. I just would tell you that if you're in the right range for whatever symptom you're working with, and we have to determine what would be a good place to train you and what range to train you at. When you're in that place, you're going to get beeps, and you're going to get a visual cue, and we have a little tactile, I didn't bring it with me, we have a little tactile outside speaker that is a little dolphin, and this goes, you know, when you're in the right place. So you get this constant feedback that says, I must be doing it right, but I don't know how I'm doing it. But if you think about walking and getting a good idea, you didn't go for a walk thinking, well, while I'm on my walk, I'm going to get this great idea. You just went for a walk.
Or if you had to describe what your body does walk. Or, you know,
And so this is like getting the trying out of the way, because when you try, your brainwave activity gets more intense. And there's amplitude, which is how high, and there's frequency, which is how close. And there are people who get very high amplitude, high peaks, high valleys, and very close together. It's just too overstimulating. We're going to talk about healing and how this can help with situations and symptoms that arise after or during chemotherapy, for example. We have to talk about a lower amplitude and probably a less frequent wave pattern. Try to get people away from their anxiety. Don't go to anxiety. Don't go to depression. Just go here. That's really the message of what neurofeedback is. It entrains your brain to just go into one range. It might be a range of right in the middle. It could be a little lower. It could be a little bit higher. What it's dependent upon is how you're feeling in response to what's happening. So if someone decides to be a subject, and I hope somebody will, you will. Pick me. Okay. Okay, so you come up and be a subject in a little while, then I might, or you might say, well, how does this feel? And you might say, okay, no, I can do that, okay. Not noticing anything. So then maybe we change the frequency a little bit, change the reward band a little bit. And how does it feel now? Oh, okay. Okay, how does it feel now? Oh, well, this probably isn't related, but my neck hurts. Well, it is related. As soon as the tension starts, then we have to adjust the band we're working in. But people are interesting. You know, they go, oh, it doesn't matter. It's not much. And I think we're just used to doing that. You know, we're used to saying, it's okay, don't pay so much attention to me. But this is really helping you use your mind to pay attention. And once your mind pays attention, you have some choices. If your mind's not paying attention, you don't have choice. Do you have any thoughts or questions? Or anybody wants
I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the two things. One, just a night. That we used to think that the brain, once we sort of passed childhood, the brain cells that we had, that was it. You know, and that's still kind of part of our thinking, but it's changing now because of research. And the research is that, you know, they call it the plasticity of the brain. So we used to think, you know, through illness or injury, we could damage the brain, but we couldn't increase its functioning or grow new brain cells. And now we know that that's not true. So yay, that's very exciting. And some of the research, they did a
even start with one symptom, starts relieving a symptom, and then there are other symptoms. So it started to be clear that this was a relieved headaches, seemed to have a relieving effect of pain, seemed to be able to do something to bring the tension up, and the network just grew and grew and grew and grew. So you'd almost think that neurofeedback could address anything. But all this is a self-regulation tool, right? And if we're self-regulated, it's probably true that we will be able to deal better with those situations that come up. And given that cancer, in my belief anyway, is so environmentally caused now, I'm curious about the level of stress that makes us more vulnerable to the things in the environment. So for me, this is a tool for lessening anxiety, still keeping present in your mind that we have reason to be concerned about things, but not letting that personal level of anxiety get to the point where we're so dysregulated we aren't effective at all. So I wanted to read a couple of case histories. This is a case history, not in my practice, but of a colleague's practice. A 50-year-old woman who had what she considered to be brain fog following chemo, just foggy. Acute auditory sensitivity. She couldn't tolerate noise that went beyond a certain frequency. And sleep problems. These are situations that were resolved with neurofeedback training. I don't know how many sessions she did, but the symptoms were all resolved and alleviated. An 80-year-old eliminated dizziness, reestablished function of her right hand, sleep patterns normalized. What I think about is there's the text and the context. The disease is like the text. Then there's the context in which an illness exists. Neurofeedback addresses the context. If that makes sense to you. We have an environment in which we don't feel well, don't function the way we want to. The functioning is one thing. The feelings of not feeling well are in that category. But there's how we live. That's the other category. It's the context. And that's what neurofeedback addresses. So it doesn't cure illness. It deals with anxiety, sleep problems, nausea, headaches, pain, migraines, those kinds of things that are related. So if someone has a brain tumor and is having headaches, then that person really needs to get a good diagnosis and a good protocol. If that person's also anxious about what's happening, now it's complicating, and 85% of the difficulty of illness is exacerbation by stress. So that's what we're talking about. I will say that there was, this isn't about breast cancer, but given that there was someone who had a dysfunction of her right hand, there was a man that I saw in his 70s who had lost sensation of his right hand following a stroke. And in one session of neurofeedback, which was really kind of a demo session, like we're do a short demo today, he had a 30-minute just introduction to this. He regained the ability to feel his cat, and his cat jumped off on the bed, to feel that that was a cat. Prior to that, he didn't have any way to discern that was a cat. He knew it was something, but he had no discerning ability. So it was neurologically caused. So it's a person's individual desire to go on with that, see what else they could improve, be more well than well maybe, or just think this is too weird. How could something resolve? You know, I've worked with people whose headaches are just, they're gone within seconds. Well, that's kind of strange. And if you begin to worry about it, you go to that place of worry about where's my headache, more than likely, you'll get your headache back. But if you can just let go of that and just say, if this is possible, then this is possible. If the symptom can be worsened, like if we do this demo, which I'd like to do soon, and when you get a little soreness, or something like that happens, the studies, it's so much storytelling, an anecdotal kind of study, but it would be very easy to measure. Um, and one client that is fairly new in my practice came for another situation than creativity. But she left the session, went to a friend's house, sat down and plunked away at the piano, and for the first time ever played the Brahms Rhapsody. She wanted to play all the way through. She just kept on going. And the only thing she could attribute to is that she'd had this 30 minutes of SMR training, and she felt pretty good when she left. So that's measurable, but it's in the story category.
One thing that has been just absolutely amazing to me is when I'm coming out of this state after the 10 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever, it's the time when I remember things that, oh, I need to do this.
Yeah.
And it just
Yeah.
comes from someplace. And, it's not hurried, it's not fearful, it's just, oh, yes, I should have done that. And then I can get up.
Yeah. That's a perfect way to describe it. Why don't you come up and ask your question, and then we'll get a chair and start hooking you up.
I can't remember my dreams, but when I get really tired. I just want to talk to you.
Okay.
When I get really tired at night, it's like they start coming back to me. What's that all about? Like I'll remember, yeah, that's what the dream was. But I can't remember when I wake up.
Oh, but you get them later.
Later at night, right when I'm ready to go to bed, just feel like really tired.
Yeah, that's like if well, yeah, it would be better for you to sit with your back to everybody so they can see as best they can. This is a little screen, so but you can get started. It's like a hypnotic trance. If I hypnotize somebody and they say, I don't remember anything about what happened, and I used to have a video camera to record what was happening because people would say, oh, I didn't go into any trance. So they'd watch the tape and they'd see their arm going up and they go, I can't believe I did that. But if I put them back into trance, they can remember what happened in the earlier trance. So
Because I ask people that all the time. They say, no, it's crazy. I never have
no, it's not crazy at all. No.
But I daydream all the time. What's that all about? It's like I'm constantly daydreaming. Or just
You know-
fade out. And I'm like, but it's all the time.
It depends on how you use it.
Uh-huh.
If somebody comes and interrupts you from daydreaming, it'll sometimes embarrass you. One of the articles I wrote in that McGraw-Hill is about if a student starts daydreaming in class, the different ways you can bring them back in a creative manner rather than to ball them out. You get punished in that state, and you feel that punishment terribly invasive in your body. But if you say to somebody, well, maybe whatever you're thinking of could be something really important for you. And maybe as you come back into the room, you will remember what that was. It's a much nicer way of bringing somebody out of that state.
Sometimes it's like I don't even think I'm thinking of anything. It's more like a trance. My friend calls it like a dead-eye fish stare. You come in, you come back, it's like just staring.
Yeah, it's not being utilized. It's a great state to utilize. It's not being utilized. If I had my very favorite thing that I would do would be that I would use hypnosis more and more and more in my practice. But in the hypnotic trance, you don't get the feedback you get in this. And people like to know, well, what did I do? How is that related? And that's what makes this valuable. And the brain seems to like that, just like various cats. They like that milk, and that operant conditioning really worked for them. So there is something about the actual feedback that people say, I can see the numbers, or I can see what the screen's doing. Because we're just doing a demo, let's just do C4. Yeah.
Would this help a person in the last stages of dying?
Um, My main trainer, Sue Offner's neighbor, was dying, and she took what we call the alpha theta training. And by the way, if we don't have time to do an adequate demonstration, anybody in here is invited experience it. But Sue talks about in relationship to this, maybe it's kind of like the chalice of repose vigil. You know, it's like the letting go of all the extraneous stuff and being able to experience no pain. Maybe it's like palliative care too. Because Sue's father was dying of I can't imagine anything more disabling than ALS, but somehow her dad had something worse than ALS with some of those same symptoms. And he did neurofeedback for the last 3 years of his life. It brought him back into a place of being able to talk with his family and prepare some things and just have an easier transition. So it's, I have not personally had anyone come to my office who is in that stage of their life and transition, but I think that it has to be helpful. It has to be. Yeah.
I have a question about phantom limb. So if they know that a part of the brain that may be next to that part then sort of takes over, like if you lose your arm, it might be that your cheek, you can feel your arm in your cheek. Could this be useful for something like that? Because it's not directly, I mean, it's not like biofeedback, but if you went there and you changed, could that part of the brain then essentially learn to be not stimulated?
What you're saying is a phantom limb problem is
It's actually a brain change, so
and it's a problem for the person,
right.
itching or uncomfortableness of some sort. You know, I'd have to put that aside and go ask about it.
It'd be interesting because it could be a more,
There's a really interesting explanation. In this book, it's a great book, and really nicely done, but they talk about phantom or missing limbs. It would be interesting to look at in terms of neurofeedback, but there's a great discussion in this book.
Yeah, I would be glad to ask. One of the things about being involved with neurofeedback is that sometimes you'll have that same experience after a power nap or a meditation practice. So if more of us were doing power naps and meditation practice, we might get that benefit. I'm pretty convinced that power naps and meditation are a repair process. That their blood flow, that your attention and your relaxation is in a self-regulating mode. But I also know that people say life comes in and then I forget. I totally forget to do that. I forget that I should be napping and I forget to meditate. And then they get angry and upset that they've forgotten, and then it's harder to get back to it. But I think there is some similarity. And for whatever reason, there is a repair process that happens with this that lasts. And if there is a new circumstance in a person's life that is a loss, a tremendous shock to the system, then it's possible that the regression back to the way you were will come up. But it won't come up as strongly, and you will remember that there is a way, either through some other avenue or through neurofeedback, and you'll get a booster session. There is more and more neurofeedback on the market for home use, by the way. And we're just talking about in training for a period of time. We're getting trained by television and commercials and all kinds of things. So, okay, I realize that there's an opportunity to spend.
It's just hard to sit down and meditate. So I'm hoping that you find that this might be helpful in those times.
We have these silly computers doing things. So I have to, you can talk while it's a thing it does. It's not showing down.
So questions while we're getting this, and we'll probably have to kind of move through it. If you want to actually see the screen, we'll have a little more flow sort of situation.
Would you explain what you did in cooking your up?
Oh, sure.
I think that seems to
Some
be a thing that
some
people
scientist or somebody along the line, I don't know, it's not in my brain, came up with a way to standardize places on the head. So they initially started training. This is a sensory motor strip. This part of your brain, and they initially just started training C3 and C4, coming out of Barry Sternman's work, working with epilepsy, and this is something that has been found very useful for epilepsy. And then it went to ADD, and then, as Eva said, it branched out into different conditions and symptoms. So we chose to do C4, and that's the right side of her brain, and Lynn's brain, and we'll be giving her reward at 12 to 15, which is a lower beta, which is usually a calming. So this is often done for over-arousal symptoms or kind of anxiety place, but it's also just it's a calming place. If there was someone with a history of a lot of depression, you wouldn't want to do C4 training. That's found that that's not a good thing. So do you have a? I'm sorry. Put it on the That's not great. That's kind of awkward.
I have a high blood pressure. Would it help high?
I would think that this would be a good placement.
Okay.
So anyway, I don't know if that was very much of an explanation, but that's why we.
Well, that and then just the technical link.
Oh, okay.
It's this little thing and how it goes on. And
So this is the
like
training.
not a
This
big
is the training site.
electrical chair or anything.
No electrical signals going into her brain.
No. Oh, and it's training.
So this is amplifying her natural brainwave activity.
Like a little microphone.
Yeah. And then there's actually an amplification process because we've got we're skull and all sorts of things. And then what this equipment does to 15, and technically, I don't know exactly how this happens, but if you want to know, we have information. I don't know in a way that I can explain it well, except for using my words. So it's filtering out this 12 to 15, and that's the one we're going to be rewarding when she goes there. She'll get, there are games on the computer, and there's a number of different games. One is like Pac-Man. It's one of the first ones. It's very simple. So when you're training, when you're in that range, you get rewarded, and therefore it moves and gobbles up these little dots on the screen, and you get these beeps. Okay, and it goes dark and stops if you're producing too much beta or high, either muscle tension or a lot of do busy mind kind of stuff. Or if you get too sleepy, you don't get rewarded to go to those places. So you start to find, and it's not really in a conscious way, but more like learning how you learn to ride a bike. You know, there's an understanding that your body gets it, your brain gets it in some way. And so the first trace that the therapist, there's different called traces. There'll be the raw EEG, and you can come up and look at it too. And then there'll be what's being inhibited, and then what's being rewarded, and then another inhibit. So
When I first started learning this, I thought I must be in a different country and they're speaking a language that I've never understood. And if I just hang out with this for a while, it probably will make sense. And I have to say that 2 years later, it's starting to make sense. So I don't expect any of you to get all of the data that we're giving. But here's Lynn's head, so to speak, her nose and her ears. Okay, and this is where the electrode is. Okay? So Yuba said nothing goes into your brain, but I'll tell you, if we had a really bad electrical storm, I'd shut everything down. And we wouldn't do this. I wouldn't use the phone and I wouldn't do this. What is amazing to me is that this little gold electrode, this big, can record anything. I mean, I'm just kind of amazed by it. How does that happen? It's that, you know, your brain is, somebody likened it to a canned peach in a can. You know, it's just soft. It can be, sometimes some people describe it as soft as a raw egg. You know, and so when you think about that, that's all plastic. That, in the sense of its ability to move and change, and millions of neural connections, and we've got this nice hard case on it. So Yuba's putting a lot of 1020 paste. This is actually called the 1020 system, and it's just the way we measure. And so it's called 1020 paste. It's paste you find in any neurologist's office. It's water soluble. Sometimes I don't get all the paste out of somebody's hair, and it feels like glue, but it washes out.
and Barbara just told me that on sleep studies, sometimes they use super glue. We don't do that.
Oh my God.
It's not right. You're tossing it. Yeah. But I didn't know. But that makes
Because
sense.
you're moving around. Okay, so this is one of the early games.
Is that Procomo? No. What's the signal look like? Stop, sorry.
It's okay. It looks normal, and it's within the traces, and so I'm just going to go ahead and start the game and then make some adjustments.
So I just look at it, or?
Try to it.
So actually,
So what we tell people is let yourself be rewarded by the game, by the sounds and the more you try, and you sort of learn this, the more you try to do it, usually you don't do so well. So it's really kind of finding that place. And sometimes it's not a particularly conscious process, so it's helpful if you can tune in and find, oh yeah, I had a lot of tension in my body, and the game wasn't going very fast. So those kinds of awarenesses are really important as you go along. But sometimes, Seba works with a lot of children, and sometimes it's hard for them necessarily to discern what it is, but they can still do it, they get it, you know.
So clench your jaw. See that? So muscle tension's going to override the signal. And I've always going, oh, look what happens when I wave my arms. Well, yeah, but that's really not brain training. It's really waving your arms, but that does happen. The game will stop. So the game only goes if Lynn's electrical activity is between 12 and 15. And the more it is, I don't know if you can hear the beeps from where you are, but the more it is, Pac-Man will just eat those little dots. And it's kind of in training. So here's 0 to 30. That's everything that's being recorded off of that one little spot. But out of that, here's the 4 to 7. Those are slow. And out of that, here's the reward range, which is 12 to 15. And out of that is the busier signal, which is 22 to 30. So these are lifted out. And so if I look at the 22 to 30 and I see lots of amplitude and lots of activity, I might say, can you tell me anything that you're experiencing right now? So his clench your jaw again. And this is, look what happens to this line, it just goes flat. So that is considered kind of an artifact, that tension that a person might have.
How come it fades colors too? When you're talking cues and how blizzard.
And it's not like, it's not like this, that, you know, that's sort of a normal thing. It's not that that's a bad thing, but we're trying to isolate and train this particular brainwave activity. And so that when you need to go to that place, you have more capacity to go there. It's not that your raw EEG would ever look significantly different from the beginning of the time to the end, you know, whenever you finished training, but your capacity to call upon those states when you need it would be hopefully increased.
The
Now,
driving
yeah.
would be good, the road rage, same thing.
You're supposed to have a good time when you're doing this. It's not supposed to be an effort.
So if you wanna see this closer, feel free to come up and
Is this up there, she just sort of lets herself float a little bit, or?
and I think each person has to kind of find that. If you float too much,
Oh, yeah.
then you could get into, and each person is very individual, you know, in terms of what one person's floating is and what.
I was thinking of the sort of relating to, you know, what a picture looks like how you have to put yourself fully into it
To see the image.
That was kind of the state you're trying to induce. Something akin to that.
It could be, it'd be interesting, but
It's sort of
this is
a real focus.
this is a alert but
Yeah.
calm.
Yeah,
It'd be interesting to measure someone
in that.
in that state, to know specifically what that
I'm going to try to
is.
explain to you, okay, now this is how you look at this picture.
There's a man, in Jim's book, there's a man named Les Femi who does, he's been doing this work for a long time. He does alpha synchrony training, and he has different kinds of equipment, but he works a lot with different kinds of attentional focus, and it would be really interesting to talk to him. And actually, Jim's next book is a collaboration with Les Femi, so that'll be an interesting book to look for.
Is this a pleasurable state to be in?
This should be, yes.
You feel really daydreamy. I think you really go to sleep right now.
So if you're feeling too sleepy, then we would need to make some adjustments so
if somebody has medication that really works for, say, improving REM sleep, then the body will codify around that medication. That's Candace Pert's work that has exemplified that. So you get used to that substituting. Like I've had thyroid surgery. I don't want my thyroid to work, so I take Synthroid. Because if my thyroid works, it's an autoimmune disease that's been defeats me. So my body's kind of codified around the Synthroid, pretending I do have a thyroid that works. And that's important for my well-being, and I will probably take Synthroid all the rest of my life. But I think you have to weigh sleeping medications and serotonin uptake drugs and those to see if they are truly helping you always over the terms that you are taking them, and can you then go off of them and have self-regulation. And if you can't, your body will codify around that medication. As long as it's working, then I think it's important to take it, just as it's important for me to take it. But I do know that there are different sleep problems that neurofeedback helps with in terms of self-regulation. And REM sleep is one of them. I don't know specifically what. Yeah. Because sleep is generally, I can't fall asleep, I wake up too many times during the night, I wake up groggy, I wake up too early, there are those kinds of REM sleep is very deep sleep. Yeah. So, if you think I'm not getting enough restorative sleep, then I guess you'd have to see by experience whether neurofeedback would help restore that sleep without medication. Yeah. But I would be glad to ask more about that. It's almost 2. I don't know who's using the room next, but you've been really attentive. Go back and take a look at the materials. And take a card, and if you want to call either you or me at my office, because you're interested in exploring this a little bit more, do. Just even if you don't have any symptoms, we're going to see what it's like.
Well, I feel like an old hobo on the side, lonesome and blue. I was fair as a summer day. Now the summer days are through. You pass through places, and places pass through you. To carry them with you on the soles of your traveling shoes. Well, I love you so dearly, I love you so clearly. I'll wake you up in the morning so early just to tell you I got the wandering blues. I got the wandering blues, and I'm gonna quit these rambling ways one of these days soon. train